The one thing I hear the most from sambar hunters is how they can't use the 6.5s for those deer because of the regulations, and they always cite that in Sweden they shoot moose with 6.5. So let's talk about the 6.5s, let's jump in and let's find out what you can actually do with the 6.5 cartridge. Welcome back to another ballistics video. Now, we're not going to be talking about moose in this video. That was just a nice little opening, wasn't it? We're actually talking about these little guys, fallow deer. So, as most of you are aware, it's either not recommended or not legal to hunt sambar deer with anything below 270, and that usually goes for reds as well, depending on where in the country you live. However, in most places you can hunt fallow deer, hog deer, and chital with a 240 or a 6mm and above. So we might delve into the 6mm in another video, but today we're just going to stick to 6.5s. Now, I do like having energy levels, and you'll probably know that if you watched my videos before, when we talk about hunting cartridges, because it gives you a metric to gauge yourself off. Now, when we talk about sambar deer, in my videos I always talk about 1500 joules. When we're talking about fallow hunting, Tasmania actually has an energy rating. So, for instance, in Victoria, you can hunt sambar with a 357 Magnum, but it actually puts out way less energy than a 243. Yet you can't hunt a sambar with a 243 in Victoria, but you can with the 357. That's why I think the energy level cap makes it a little bit more even. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Alright, so in Tasmania, you have to use a 6mm or above, so a 6mm or a 243 or above, and it has to deliver a projectile with kinetic energy of 1350 joules, which is 996 foot-pounds, at 100 meters from the rifle. It's a bit weird that it's at 100 meters. You would think that it would just be, you know, the muzzle, but sure, why not? To put that in perspective of how slow that is, if you were to get a 6mm projectile, 100 grain, and you were to push it about 650 to 680 meters per second, then that would give you 1350 joules. So that's actually very, very slow, and that's actually a very small cartridge. So you could use something like a 7 Wolverine, I believe it's called off the top of my head, which is a 5.56 car case necked up to 7mm. So no recoil really, and just putting a pill on the target. So enough rabbiting on. That's the metric we're going by. I've done a few of these videos before, and every single time someone complains about the format of how I've done it. We're going off 1350 joules for an ethical kill. I've added in some other data. We have drop in centimeters because fuck the imperial system. And we have our come up in MOA because most people have an MOA turret on their site and or kind of understand MOA. We have calculated, so I've got a lot more data in this one than I normally do. So we have calculated our maximum point blank range for an 8-inch target, which is the kill zone on a fallow. And I've also done a couple other metrics. So we have our joules, 1350. We have our drop. Once it goes past dropping 10 centimeters, it's now outside its point blank range. So you'll have that line there, but I'll also tell you what it is exactly because these are in 100 meter increments. We then have, generally if you go off a 1-inch tube on a sight, you'll generally have roughly around 20 MOA of adjustment within that. So I've just capped this at, once we hit 20 MOA, then you have lost the ability to dial on your target, which means that you would then have to dial and hold, etc, etc. I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole of different scopes. You want more MOA, you put a canted base on there, or you get a bigger tube. Bigger tube gives you more adjustment, not more light as most people assume. The light is affected by your objective lens, not by your tube size. Tube size gives you more adjustment in your reticle. Right, I think we've clarified everything before we jump into our first cartridge. Now, when I was asked to do 6.5, the actual question was, can I use 6.5 Grendel for hunting deer? And yada yada yada, can you do a video on all the 6.5s? So, 6.5 Grendel. The heaviest bullet I could get in the data I have is a 130 grain ELDM. The speed on that is 2350 feet per second, or 716 meters per second. We get 1350 joules out to 300 meters. Anything past that, we drop below that threshold. Our point blank range is 247 meters, so we lose it after that. And if you were going to dial our come up, we go past 20 MOA at 600 meters. So even though you can physically dial onto the target at 600, you may not have enough energy to kill the target, and or you're outside your maximum point blank range. Would I hunt a fallow deer with a 6.5 Grendel? Not personally, but if you were a small woman or child, then potentially you may want to have a cartridge that doesn't recoil. So there you go. Moving on to our next bracket, we have 3 cartridges here. We have the 260 Remington, we have the 6.5 by 284, and we have the 6.5 by 55 Swede. I know some people are going to get the nose out of joint because the Swede is in this bracket. Everybody knows that you can load a Swede hotter than that in a modern rifle, but the reason why it's sitting there is because the SAMI spec puts it there, and I can't change the SAMI spec. You can't put a hot cartridge in an old Swede gun because it has been around since 1891, so you've got to load down for the oldest guns. I hope that's covered off that wee little bit. But everyone knows that 6.5 by 55 Swede absolutely smokes the Creedmoor if it's hand loaded. For the rest of the cartridges, we're pushing on with 143 grain ELDX with a BC of 0.623. These 3 cartridges are going 2,700 feet per second, or 822 meters per second. And as we can see on the data that's down the bottom here, out to 600 meters, we have well above 1,350 joules. May as well stop the video there because most of you aren't hunting past 600 meters. Just buy yourself a 6.5 Swede and be done with it. For our drop, we drop below our 10 centimeters. So if that didn't make sense of what I was doing for the point blank range earlier, I'll quickly explain it now. 8-inch target, shouldn't go more than 4 inches above or 4 inches below point of aim. 4 inches into centimeters is 10 centimeters. So once it goes below 10 centimeters off the drop, then it's obviously too low. So that puts us, our point blank range is under 300 meters. As you can see there, it is 286 meters, but we can still dial onto the target up to 700 meters. So if you extrapolate all that together, if you're going to dial a not blank hold 600 meters with any of those 3 cartridges, you are good to go, hunt fallow deer, just buy a 6.5 Swede and be done with it. Alright, next one down is the cartridge that you either love or you hate. It's kind of like Collingwood, the 6.5 Creedmoor, 2,800 feet per second. That's obviously the max. That's max what's in the loading manual that I have. Some people can load it hotter, some people actually load it lower because they're looking for an accuracy node, not a velocity node. Anyway, that takes us out to, you get an extra 100 meters off that, so your joules of energy is out to 700 meters now. We are still under 300 meters for a maximum point blank range, which is 296 meters, so you're only gaining 10 meters off the other cartridges, which isn't a great deal for a flat shooting cartridge that everyone thinks it is. And our come up, we get it out to the same distance, which is 700 meters. I'm not going to crap on for too long about the Creedmoor because I personally don't think it lives up to the hype. That's just my opinion. The next cartridges we'll go on with, there are 2 of them. We have the 6.5 Remington Magnum. So if you were to take a 7 Remington Magnum and make the cart case slightly shorter and neck it down to 6.5, that would be your 6.5 Rem Mag. And we also have a 6.506, which is a 3006 cartridge necked down to 6.5. Used to be a Wildcat, now a commercial cartridge. Both of these, you can push them at 2,900 feet per second or 883 meters per second. And that takes us out to, funnily enough, 700 meters again. So you're getting the same, relatively close joules of energy as the Creedmoor, because once you hit 800 meters, you're not above the 1350 threshold that we're talking about. We get an extra little bit on our maximum point blank range, not by much. You're gaining another 10 meters. So as you can see here, over the last 3 brackets we've done, between 2,700 feet per second to 28, you gain 10 meters. Between 28 to 29, you gain 10 meters. So you can sort of see how that is panning out in extrapolation. We're gaining an extra 100 meters on our dial though, so now if we have a 20 MOA of adjustment in our sight, we can get into 800 meters. So there you go, 6.5 Remington and 6.506. Moving on to the next bracket is our 3,000 feet per second, which we have the 264 Win Mag. We're gaining another 10 meters again. Funnily how that's working, we're now at 316 meters for a maximum point blank range. As you can see down the bottom here, we're gaining another 100 meters now. We're going out to 800 meters with our energy. We're not gaining anything really in our point blank range, and we're not gaining much with our turret dialing. We're still sort of sitting around the 800 meter mark. Then we're going to step into the one that's really, really popular at the moment. Not so much in Australia, I don't really see it around that much, but obviously the Yanks love it because, you know, Yanks love 6.5. Here's the 6.5 PRC. So, going 3,100 feet per second, what do you reckon we're gaining? 10 meters. As you can see, at 800 meters, we're well above, we're at 1530 there. We don't really gain much in our point blank range, which we talked about, and our come up, you don't really gain that much as well. I mean, it's a couple of MOA, but then once you hit the 900 meter bracket, you're sitting at 20, so directly on 20. You may run out of adjustment there, depending on your scope. Obviously, as I said, don't get too wrapped around the axles about the come up and all that, because if you are dialing, you probably know how to dial, and you probably don't have a 1-inch tube with 20 MOA of adjustment. You probably have a 34-inch tube with 30 MOA of adjustment and or holds. Anyway, moving on. The next and last one on our list is quite a big boy. It is a Weatherby though, so Weatherby cartridges, one, are very fucking expensive, and two, very hard to come by. Most people that I know that use them hand load. We have the 6.5 300 Weatherby Magnum. This is where it's getting interesting. We're jumping 200 feet per second, so we're at 3,300 feet per second, and we're gaining another 22 meters in our point blank range, so we're at 348 meters. That's pretty good. That means that you can just dead hold it, and the bullet's going to hit you in the kill zone. Well, hopefully not you. Hit it in the kill zone out to pretty much 350 meters, which is quite delish. As you can see down the bottom here, we have 1,350 joules all the way out to 1,000 meters, just by 6 joules. Our point blank range obviously stops before 400 because we're at 350. And if we have 20 MOAs of adjustment in our turret, we can still use that sight all the way out to 900 meters and only just not 1,000 meters by 1 MOA. What did we get out of that video? Not a great deal, and I feel like there's not a great deal you do get out of my ballistic videos. What you can pull out of this in your little brain holes is you should be going, I want to hunt this animal, and the limit legally, or the limit ethically, whatever, is this amount of energy. The area I'm hunting in, I can get shots easily out to blah distance. And then from there, you can figure out which cartridge you need to use to get that out to where you hunt. I highly doubt that anyone watching this video would really realistically be taking a shot out to 1,000 meters on a fallow deer in Tasmania. And if they were, they probably wouldn't be using a 6.5 by 300 Weatherby Magnum. They'd probably be using a 7 rum. However, you can do it. So maybe you don't want to have all of that extra recoil from a 7 rum, because you can do it with a 6.5 300. That's what I want you guys to get out of these videos. I use this method and these calculations all the time when I pick a particular bullet, or I pick a cartridge, or I go, hey, I'm going to hunt in this area. My maximum I can ever shoot is 300 meters, and I want to put as much energy as I can into the animal at 300 meters, but I also don't want to have to dial, so I don't have to think about it, I just want to aim on. So then I will do all these maths to find out where my maximum point blank range is at 300 meters with the most amount of energy in the lightest weight rifle, to make my hunting experience just that little bit more brain dead, and I can just switch my brain off and just look for the animal, pull the tit, and kill the deer. So, I think that's enough for me rabbiting on about cartridges. The next one we'll do is probably going to be 6mm, which I know almost fuck all about because I don't use 6mm. But anyway, if you guys want a 6mm, we'll do 6mm. If you want a different caliber video done of something else, whack it in the comments. Patreon is down there. We talk about this nerdy crap all the time over on Patreon. So join us over there, because we kind of talk about this stuff and then what we talk about ends up being videos. So help us out. You can join for $3. just like buying me a brew. If you want some merch, not Pantera merch, but if you want some Fuck Outdoors merch, link in the description. I think that's about it. Dog, what do you reckon? No, don't give a fuck, you're asleep. Okay, I'll catch you next video, and hooroo.